good to see you. I got into the business because I had a conversation with my wife about doing better financially. We made good money, we paid our bills, we weren't hurting, but we really didn't have much saved for retirement. We didn't have an emergency fund, we had debt, we just weren't really going anywhere. So I started reading books, listening to podcasts, learning as much as I could about finance. And I found out real quick I never learned any of it in school. My parents never taught it to me. So we started implementing what I learned, and we got out of debt in 2 years. We saved a big emergency fund. We got on track to retire early if we wanted to. And I told my wife I would teach this to people for free. And so I made a plan to get out of my corporate job, got my licenses and everything knocked out. And the rest is history. I get to teach people exactly what we did to be financially successful. And if anybody else filters in, I have booklets up here that we can hand out, or I can get it back to them, or whatever you guys want to do. One of the first things, actually, here, I'll set it out on the table. There you go. That's it.
Please. Thank you.
So, one of the first things is we go through all of this. If there's any questions you guys have or anything, there is an interest form I handed out. You can fill it out. And I'd be happy to sit down on a personal level and just walk through either a financial plan or answering questions you have. I don't charge anything to do that. I'm happy to sit down and just map out what we call financial GPS. So to get you from where you are to where you want to go. But you can fill that out. Even for the interest form at the bottom, I always prefer and enjoy comments, good or bad. Tell me what I did good, tell me what I did bad. And you can even put in there you were 2 minutes late getting here. You can remind me of that. That's perfectly fine.
Can I tell you the Philly stuff? I'm just
kidding. I'm obviously a Phillies fan.
So he's well aware.
I'm well aware that they really suck right now.
I don't know. I just was talking.
Yeah, they got
Yeah.
Sorry.
last night.
Yeah, by the Cubs, unfortunately, who were last in the division, in their division up until they played the Phillies. So, yeah, it's a long season, so we'll see. I'm a hockey fan, so the Flyers made the playoffs, so I'm happy about that.
Good.
So, with that being said, I'm going to kind of jump in here. From a financial perspective, I'm going to go over a few statistics and we'll walk through some fundamentals. This particular booklet, I know I've done these before, so if anybody's online or if you've been to any of mine before, we always went through the how money works. That kind of covers all bases of your finance. The road to financial independence focuses a little bit more on investing and saving. You guys are in a unique situation being realtors. I don't know how many are part-time, full-time, and so on, but being 1099 and being self-employed, it's a whole different world when it comes to retirement. You actually have more options than the average person just working a W-2 job. So that's really important. I have a decent amount of realtor clients that I can help, not just realtor, but self-employed, that I help them put things in the right place. So on these pages aren't numbered, unfortunately, so I'm just going to have to guide you guys along. So the first page that we're going to talk about kind of has like a little wheel with arrows going outward. Looks like this. On the left-hand side, just a couple of challenges today. 91% of retirees rely on Social Security as a major or minor source of income in retirement. How many in here trust Social Security long term? Anybody? I raise my hand, but I don't either. That it is only financially solvent until 2035 as it stands right now. So we're less than 10 years from insolvency in Social Security. Now, do I think it's going to disappear? No. Do I think they're going to have to change benefits for younger generations or somehow? Yes. I think ultimately long term, I would hate to see this, but I think it's going to become basically a qualification program. Just like any other government program, if you hit certain milestones, you don't qualify. If you fall below that threshold, then you qualify. So if someone retires with $2 million, they might look at that and say, you don't need Social Security. That would drive me nuts, because if I put money in for my entire career and then they're going to tell me I don't get anything, that's basically, you're welcome for the donation. But I personally, if I could opt out of Social Security today, I would do it. Yeah, I would just invest the money myself in anything.
Taxes a lot.
Correct.
Social Security taxes.
And the fun part about being self-employed is you get to pay both sides of the Social Security coin, and you get to pay 15% in instead of 7.5%, roughly 7.5%. So 91% of retirees are relying on it. So we know the baby boomers are retiring. That retirement pool is getting larger. So that's why it's putting strain on it. The second one, half of retirees say they retired earlier than expected. basically health reasons, taking care of parents, a relocation and didn't find a job, something like that. There's a lot of people that we're finding that are retiring earlier than they suspected for things outside of their control. And when that happens, if you're not prepared, that can be detrimental. And then last but not least, just 2 in 10 workers feel very confident about their ability to basically retire comfortably. And you don't have to say out loud what you think, but I would just think on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident am I that I'm going to be able to retire comfortably? And what I mean by comfortably is you don't have to work again, you don't outlive your money. So we're gonna walk through some of the principles that will help you get there. At the bottom of that page, it just talks about 3 different investment phases when it comes to retirement. And everything I'm talking about today is long-term investing, not day trading, not short-term. That's a whole different animal. I'm talking about investing for the long term, to and through retirement. So we're talking decades of investment. And I'll talk about market history here in a little bit. But there's basically 3 phases: the accumulation, the protection, and the distribution. The accumulation is where most people are, and it's the biggest part of your retirement journey. It's when you're working and you're just socking money away. So you're accumulating as much as you can. I always tell everybody there's 3 main ways to build wealth, in my opinion. If you look at anybody successful in our country, it's real estate, it's a business, and it's the stock market. Any one of those 3 or all of those 3 will build wealth for you. And if you can do all 3, it's even better. But that's what you're doing in the accumulation phase. You're just acquiring as much as you can in stocks and investments, real estate, building a business, anything like that. Protection means you're getting close to retirement, and we want to make sure that we protect your money. God forbid something happens like in 2008. It's not that we want to completely jump out of the market, but we don't want you to take a big punch in the face right before you retire. Probably the worst example of that I have is someone that got referred to me. It's actually a distant family member. When COVID happened, you guys remember, anybody watch the stock market on a regular basis? You guys remember what happened in February, March of 2020 when they shut everything down? The market fell almost 40% in 30 days, the fastest it's ever fallen in the history of the S&P 500.
Yeah.
By the end of the year, it was up 10%. The market from January 1 to December 31st of 2020 was up 10%, even though it fell 40% in the middle of the year. I had a client that got referred to me that was right about to retire in 2020. He had $1 million. It dropped to 590. He panicked, called his advisor. Unfortunately, his advisor did not give him good sound advice and say, stick to it. There's no point in jumping ship now. He said, well, if you're nervous, we can put it on short-term bonds. They put it in short-term bonds. I met with him later that year. He was still at 590. Had he stayed in his portfolio, he would have been roughly 1.1 or 1.2 million. And so I helped him work with the 590, but there's nothing we can do at that point. Because if you ever research it, go back and look at the S&P 500 in 2020, and that month, it literally did what we call V-shaped bounce. It's straight down and straight back out. So if you didn't get back in within a 2-month period, you missed a ton. So we want to make sure that we're protected and we're doing things right and we don't panic, jump in, jump out, etc. And then last is distribution. Now you're retired, the assets you built, whether it be rental real estate, whether it be stocks and bonds and a portfolio, you're pulling income from that as distribution and you're getting income while you're not working. So we want to make sure that that lasts. Well, we can agree that people are living longer nowadays. Most people in retirement are living 15, 20, 25 years. If they're going to live that long, cost of living is probably going to double or triple. Just a quick example of that is 2002, the Big Mac was $2. 2012, it was $4. Today, it's $6 to buy the sandwich. So in roughly a 20 to 25 year period, that has tripled in cost. But here's the cool thing. Here's why it's important to invest. McDonald's stock in 2002 was $16 a share. In 2022, it was $267 a share. Their dividend went from 24 cents per share to $6.08 per share in that time. So if the cost of living rises, but you're invested, you're actually taking advantage of that. If you're in energy companies, when gas prices go up, like I own ExxonMobil stock personally. Their stock back in 2020 when all the crap hit the fan. Does anybody remember when oil prices went negative per barrel? Like in the middle of 2020, I bought ExxonMobil stock at $40 a share. Right now it's about 167.
Yeah.
And that's just 6 years later roughly. It was actually up to 140 within 2 years. And then it went down and now prices are back up a little bit. So it's very, very important to understand how far your dollar goes and what inflation does and invest properly for that as well. So if you guys flip to the next page, at the bottom, it talks about the rule of 72. So if you've ever been in any of my workshops I've done before, you've heard it. Anybody in here that has not been at a workshop but has heard of the rule of 72 before, just curious. Okay, I usually get a hand or two. This was the most compelling rule I learned when I got into the financial world. So if you take any account that's earning interest, if you have a savings account, if you have a 401k or an IRA that's earning some sort of return, if you take that rate of return and divide 72 by that interest rate or rate of return, it tells you how many years it takes your money to double. So if you're earning 3%, you can see in the chart, you're doubling every 24 years. 6 doubles every 12, 12 every 6, simple math equation. If you invested 10,000, well, the biggest thing is rate of return is important. It's what it's showing here. But if you invested $10,000 at 3% and you kept it there for 48 years, you would double to 40 grand. Double twice the 40 grand. I'm sorry. If you had 12% in that same 48 years, it would be 2.5 million. I've never met the person who wants 40 grand over 2.5 million. They're just like, how do I get there? And I look at it for me. I'm 44 years old. If I'm getting 3%, how many more doubling cycles do I have in my life if I'm only getting 3% doubling every 24 years? I only got 2 if I'm lucky. But if I'm getting 12% and I'm doubling every 6 to 7 years, I'm gonna have a lot of doubling cycles. So that's extremely important. The flip side is if you're in debt, this is working against you. So in today's, one of the biggest issues in our culture today is debt, from the government all the way down to the individual. Most importantly, consumer debt. Mortgage it. Whenever I sit down with someone, I help pay off their debt. We focus on consumer debt. Then we reevaluate, does it make sense to pay off the mortgage? Does it make sense to invest? We just run the numbers. Because a mortgage is an appreciating asset with a debt on it, as opposed to a car, which is a depreciating, a student loan, which has no asset, a credit card, which has no asset behind it. So those are more dangerous. So we want to get someone out of consumer debt as quick as possible. So if you put money in the bank, let's say you put 10 grand in a CD, it's paying you 3%, and you just kept renewing it, that's what you would earn. But what does the bank do? They go loan it out to someone in a mortgage for 6%, a personal loan for 12, a credit card for 24, and they're earning everything on the right side of this chart and paying you everything on the left. So I want people to invest personally. Yeah, you know, to that point, just this quarter, first quarter, there were several. JP Morgan was one. I think maybe Bank of America a couple. They had their all-time best profits and revenues ever this past quarter. That's a bad day in my opinion. Not that I hate banks and not that they're bad, but if they're making stuff, yeah, more people are in debt. That's why they're making those profits. So, I'm a big advocate of getting out of consumer debt as quick as possible. Any questions on the Rule 72 or anything at all up to this point? Good. All right. If you go to the next page at the top, it talks about rate of return is key. So we just talked about the Rule 72. Well, how do we get there? How many in here are comfortable with the market? They like to watch the market. If it goes down, it doesn't bother them. Most people are scared to death, and the media doesn't help, because when the market's down, the entire screen is red. The sky is falling. They get ratings off of fear. They don't get ratings off of people being excited their 401k growth. So I don't listen to anything that the mainstream media says. But at the very top here, this just shows rates of return in a couple different areas. The S&P 500, everyone familiar with what that is? It's just literally a composite of the 500 largest companies in the United States and their stock price. It just follows that. It's the best indicator of the U.S. market. So since its inception, it has averaged over 10%. So if you stocked money away in the S&P 500 and never touched it again for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you would have averaged over 10%. Even through 08, even through 2022, even through COVID. And there's a chart later on that I'll show you that. So I'm a big advocate of being very growth oriented, investing in stocks and staying away from bonds. Now I have some clients that have a little bit in bonds, just depending on the situation, but I want to grow. And not only that, when we get in retirement, the industry says you should go very heavy bond and be very conservative once you retire. I disagree. Again, going back to the whole McDonald's example, you're going to live 25 years in retirement. We need your dollar to grow faster than inflation, and it's probably going to double or triple cost of living in a 20 to 25 year span. So we need your assets to keep up with that. If we're doing it in bonds, and you can see bonds here, they've averaged 4.17%, probably not going to do it, or just barely get enough. And especially short-term treasury bills, 2.34, it's really not going to do it. And then at the bottom here, it's just showing historically, this is this is new, so I don't even remember, I'm not even positive what time frame this is. I think this is, since 1940 at the bottom. So they have January 1940 to 2024. In that time frame, if you invested any given 1 year period, there was 66 positive and 19 negative in that time frame. So the vast majority were positive over 1 year. Over 3 years, there were 74 positive. You can jump all the way out to 10 years, it's 74 positive, only 2 negative. And then the 20-year periods, there was never once a down 20-year period since 1940 in the S&P. So if you put money into the S&P 500, never touched it for 20 years, you never would have lost money. And that, again, that's including the tech bubble, 2008, all those things.
So your thought, Nate, is on the investment phases,
Mhm.
there's no reason to go into protection. It's accumulate and distribute.
Yes, the only thing we do in the protection stage is we plan for when you're gonna retire and what you need. And make sure we have it in vehicles that are gonna sustain that. So we're not necessarily in protection, we're not moving it out of risk per se, 100%. We're just repositioning it to where it's going to last you forever and make sure that it will pay out. And those last couple of years, so protection could be socking more money away for 5 years before retirement. It could be moving it to another vehicle that's more heavily dividend paying than growth oriented, because the dividends will then pay in and compound it faster. So yes, I'm not, when we talk protection, and sometimes even some of the explanations that I've read in the past about protection phases, they're moving heavily bond and more conservative. I don't do that.
Cool.
The gentleman I mentioned earlier is a good example. Had he just stuck it out for the whole year, it would have been painful for a few months, but he would have went from 1 million to 590 to 1.1 or 1.2 all in a 12-month period. It's a pretty big roller coaster, but if I talk to him on December 31st, he's not mad. He's got $1.1 million. So what? That wasn't fun, but Dave Ramsey, if you're familiar with him, he has a saying that I like. He says the only person that gets hurt on a roller coaster is someone who jumps off mid-ride. So we don't want to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So let's see here. So next page, this one's going to be just like a little mustard and green graph. Going to look like this. This just talks about dollar cost averaging, or another fundamental that I like to teach. Probably the best way to describe this is systematic investing at the very top. The reason systematic investing is important is because I don't, and no other financial advisor or even anybody on TV or at Wall Street, they have no idea when the market's going to bottom. They have no idea when the market's going to peak. So because we don't know that, if I systematically put money away every month or every paycheck, or me, I'm the way I work in my firm, I'm 1099. So the investment companies I work with pay me 1099, just like you guys get paid. Every time a commission check comes in or a paycheck or anything for me comes in, 35% of everything I make goes out to some sort of investment. Every single time. So,
It's the government.
about a quarter of mine goes to the government, like 35%. 35% goes to some sort of investment, and I send it out, so it's there. It's making money. But dollar cost averaging, what that means is every time the market dips, you buy stocks at a cheaper price. So you get more shares for less money. So you actually make more money in the long term. You can see in this example, this is just a hypothetical, but if we took two investors and they started investing $100 a month, and the stock they were investing in started at $10 a share. Investor number one had a consistently rising market. It grew every single month that they put money in. And that's what most people want the market to do. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but you make more when it fluctuates. So it went from $10 to 12 to 14 to 16 to 18 to 20 a share by the end of that 6 months. So over that period of time, with $100, they accumulated 42 shares, just because for that $100 you were buying less shares every year. So if we do quick math, $20 times 42, $840 in their account. We go to the next investor. It started at 10, it dropped all the way down to $2 a share and back up to 10. So it never went past break even. It dropped and came back up. But they were buying in every single month. They actually, if you take $10 times 126 shares, which they accumulated, that's $1,260 in their account. So they technically ended up with more money when the market dipped and rebounded than the person who was just investing in a constantly rising market. And I recommend doing it all the time. But every time the market dips, you should turn on the TV and smile and be like, all right, I'm buying at a discount. Any discount shoppers in here? Groceries, shoes, cars. Everybody buys stuff on discount anywhere in the world except for the stock market. When the stock market gets ugly, they run for the exits. But you should back the truck up and buy more. Going back to the 2020 example, I had clients that had Roth IRAs in 2020, and if they didn't fully fund them, I was calling them in March and saying, if you got the money, put it in that. Everything is showing me the market should be growing. But they shut everything down, that's why it dropped. If you put money in at the end of March, you would have earned 50 to 75% rate of return till the end of the year on your money. So I highly encourage when the market gets ugly, invest. So if you flip to the next page, it's a big chart that takes us from 1995 all the way to 2024. And it shows an instance in that year of anything that could have affected the market potentially from news headlines. But it shows what the S&P 500 did along the way. So again, if you would have invested $10,000 in 1995, ignored the headlines and just let it ride, never put another dime in 2024, you have almost $250,000 if you've never touched it. And again, that's including, I talked about all this before, that's the tech bubble bursting, that's 9/11, that's 2008, that's COVID, that's 2022, and you guys know that year, that's when they raised all the interest rates. The market took a dive, tech stocks got hammered, we're down 40 to 50%, but the total average, you can see there at the top, 10.92% that you would have averaged every year. Now, granted, it would have been fun in 08 when you're down 37%.
No, there was nothing funny about it, like,
Nothing
I'm
funny.
not writing it all.
Yeah, it's,
I'm
oh,
still writing it all.
it was ugly from the top, and it started from the financial sector and rolled out. And that was a good example. I won't go down a rabbit hole in this. I can talk for hours when it comes to this stuff, but the financial sector is so tied into everything. The banks and everything, they're tied into so many different areas that when that coin flips, everything else gets affected, and that's exactly what happened. So if you flip to the next page, this colorful chart looks like this. Another good fundamental is diversification. We don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. If you had all your stock in Lehman Brothers in 08, not a fun ordeal. But if you're diversified in different areas, you're generally going to do better long term. You're gonna spread out risk and you're going to maximize rate of return. So this is just showing 5 different sectors of the market, from small companies to large companies to different length government bonds and international stocks. And then it shows year over year from 2010 to 2024 who performed the best. So how many of you in here think that you could be pretty good at predicting who's going to be the best performer year in and year out? It's almost impossible. It really is impossible. So if we have good representation in a lot of areas, and I would eliminate the bond portion, and I personally don't like international much, I would invest in just large, mid, and small size companies and just have it throughout different sectors of the market, from finance to real estate to technology and that sort of thing. You're going to spread your risk. You're not going to have all your money in your best performer, but you're not going to have all your money in your worst performer either. Any questions on diversification? Okay. So if you flip to the very last page, it's the next to last technically, but it's going to be this one right here. This is talking about 3 specific accounts that you should have when it comes to long-term savings, but long-term investing in general. So the first one on the left in the blue is emergency account. You should always have liquid cash that is available no matter what happens. Something pops up like a water heater breaking or going down, a car breaking down, a medical bill. You're not going to make any money on that account. You'll get a fraction of a percent if you're in a savings, maybe a couple percent if you're in a money market or some sort of high yield savings. But that is designed so you don't have to take out debt. A great example, and if you've been in my workshops, you've probably heard this story before. My son is 7 years old now. So when my wife was 8 months pregnant, I was going to bed one night. She was in the master bathroom, and she said, "Nate, there's a little pile of dirt on the sill in here. We had wainscoting around, and there's a little pile of dirt on the actual sill above the wainscot." And so I walked in, and I'm like, I looked at it, and it was like that little mounds of dirt that the excavating ants like out around the sidewalks make. And I'm like, that looks like ants. So I'm looking around, and I look up, and right in the corner of the bathroom, in the ceiling in the drywall, is a little bubble, like where it's moist. So I reached up to touch it to see if it was still wet, and it cracked, and all these ants put it. And I was like, my wife's freaking out. She's 8 months pregnant, and so I run to the garage. I several cans of rain, but I only had one at the time. I get it, I go in and I had just enough to just go poof, it was like a little cloud, and that was it. Never touched the ants. I had to run to Giant, which is right up the road from my house, get some stuff, kill all the ants. Long story short, it turned out that the people who owned the house before us that replaced the roof, they did not replace the valley correctly at the addition. So it was leaking at the vent pipe and at the valley into my walls. There was moisture that drew the ants, which turned out to be a roof replacement. Plus, I had to rip drywall out, mold remediation, and all that before my son came a month later. So I had to cut a check for somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000. I don't remember what it was. I did some with myself, had some other people do it, but I had to cut a check and it came right from my emergency fund. Otherwise, it was going to be a credit card or some sort of debt because I would have had to do it before my son came home. So that's what the emergency fund is for. On the opposite side is the wealth building accounts. That's your IRAs, 401ks, etc. That's your long-term investing. It should work the hardest for you. It should make the best rate of return. We're not accessing it readily. Worst case scenario, you can pull money from those, but you're going to pay penalties and taxes. But ideally, we're not touching it long-term. It's literally an asset. I always compare stocks to a rental house. If you buy a rental house, just think that you own the asset. It grows in value over time. It's just improving your net worth. But your main goal with that is the cash flow out of it. It's the rent check. So if I have stocks, I want it creating rent checks for me. And that's what I'm going to get paid. How I'm going to get paid in retirement, but that's your wealth building accounts. And then the middle one, if you're on track and you have an emergency fund in place, you have all of your retirement on track, then a short-term account is a great place to save for kids' college, to save for buying a house, a down payment on a house, buying a new car, vacation home, whatever. Something that's 2, 3, 4, 5+ years out, but you don't want to lock it into retirement. And so we can get a better rate of return by investing that, but it's accessible whenever you need it. So it's 3 buckets that I always recommend you have: immediate short-term emergency account, short-term, more short to mid-term, that if you're saving for a house or something down the road, and then wealth building that is going to allow you to retire when you want to retire. So last couple things I'll go over that aren't in the booklet is I talked earlier about debt. Debt is really important to eliminate as quick as you can. Like I'm doing a presentation for basically all the county controllers of Pennsylvania to talk about 457 plans which they implement. But the one portion I'm going to talk about debt for them, it talks about a client who had several credit cards, an auto loan, and a mortgage. And we were able to get them out of debt completely, mortgage and all, in 9 years. They were 44. And so we turned around and saved that $2,700 a month that was freed up from all the debt payments. And by age 67, it was $2.4 million. So we just show the picture of how to get out of debt, invest it, and how to get it to work for you. It's the Rule 72. But if you're familiar with Dave Ramsey, it's called the debt snowball, debt stacking, something like that. Now, the mortgage I don't always include, but consumer debt for sure. We do a debt snowball to eliminate that debt as quick as possible. So if you guys have questions on that, I'll hang out for a few minutes here too, that if you have personal questions. But that's something I always like to put in the back of someone's mind, because your biggest wealth building tool is your income and free cash flow from whatever business you have. So if debt is tying that up, it just hinders everything. And then the last thing I'll talk about, the least sexy topic in all of finance, is life insurance. Not everybody needs it. Most financial advisors and life insurance agents will tell you everyone should have it. You should have it your whole life. I don't agree with that. I believe it's a bridge product from where you stand now to the point in time when you're financially independent, if there's a need. So if you have someone who depends on your income, if you have debt, mortgage, and things that need to be covered if you were to die and your income were to stop, life insurance is necessary. If you're debt-free, no mortgage, kids are grown and moved out, you've saved $1 million, $2 million, would you need life insurance? I would argue no, because they're going to inherit what you built. So only pay the premiums for a short amount of time. So that's definitely an important thing. I run into that from time to time. It's a very small part of my business. I actually really don't like life insurance. I don't like writing life insurance at all. It's a pain in the butt business wise, but I do it because it's necessary. And I always mention it because I've been on both sides of the coin. Unfortunately, I have clients that decided not to get it. Someone passes away and we're in crisis mode. And I have clients that passed away. We had it and it allowed them to basically live out their plan, their dream, their retirement, however they wanted to, without having to worry about finances. So with that being said, I'll open it up for questions. Any questions that anybody has on anything financial? I know I talk fast, so. Any questions?
Anyone at home have anything?
Good.
No, yeah,
All right, guys, I appreciate your time. If you have an interest form, like I said, I will hang out a little bit if you want to drop it off. And if you have specific questions, we can step aside and I can answer any questions you have. But I appreciate your time, guys.
Thank
Nate's
you.
my guy. I mean,
So it sounds like we're not allowed.
no,
Last time it was like, we weren't allowed to talk to the other guys.
no. But Nate helps me out and, I didn't understand a lot of this. I, like him, not the kind of stuff they teach you in school. It's not the stuff that my parents taught me or probably even understood.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that my kids have that advantage. So I'm happy to have met him. He tracked me down on Facebook.
Yeah, we just connected the network and
Yeah,
just refer business and whatnot.
yeah, and we've been working together now for, I don't know, since around COVID.
Yeah.
Rob now also wanted me to mention everyone that he uses him also and loves him so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So, and my retirement, did not exist before him. I mean, there was some, IRAs out there floating around from past employers that were not managed and, Nate's helped me out, trying to put together a plan and work towards it. So, thank you.
My pleasure. I
Okay.
hang out in the back. I'll grab a seat on the couch if anybody needs anything.
Go get comfortable. All right, thanks everybody at home.
Aha, I was there. But I'm already a younger man and I'm